She found muddy footprints leading from the back door to her bedroom. They were darker than the floorboards, damp enough to catch the light from the kitchen window. Each print was complete heel, arch, toes, pressed down with deliberate weight. Not smeared, not rushed. As if whoever had made them had walked calmly, confidently, through the house. Elena stood barefoot at the threshold, the cold of the tile seeping into her soles. The air smelled faintly of wet earth, sharp and mineral, out of place in the closed, quiet house. Outside, rain whispered against the trees, steady and patient, like it had been falling for a long time. The back door was still locked. She checked it anyway, her fingers trembling as they traced the bolt, the handle, the weather stripping. Everything was intact. No sign of forcing. No gap wide enough for anything solid to pass through. And yet the mud was here, tracked carefully across the kitchen floor, past the dining table, down the hallway, toward her bedroom. Elena swallowed and followed the trail with her eyes. The footprints kept a consistent distance between them, a familiar stride length. Whoever it was hadn't wandered. They hadn't paused to look around. They knew exactly where they were going. The house was silent in that unnatural way that came just before dawn, when even the pipes seemed to hold their breath. The refrigerator didn't hum. The old clock in the living room had stopped sometime during the night, its hands frozen at 3:17. She hadn't noticed until now. Sleep deprivation, she told herself. Grief. Both had been blurring the edges of things for weeks. She hadn't slept properly since the funeral. Every night blurred into the next, half dreams, jolting wake-ups, the sense of someone standing just out of view. Sometimes she heard the floor creak and lay still, convincing herself it was the house settling. Sometimes she smelled rain even when the windows were closed. She stepped forward. The mud squelched faintly under her foot where the edge of a print hadn't fully dried. The sound was obscenely loud in the quiet. She winced and froze, listening. Nothing answered. The footprints continued down the hallway, their edges softening as the wood absorbed the moisture. They passed the bathroom, past the spare room she hadn't opened since she moved back. The door to that room was still shut, dust undisturbed along its frame. Elena felt a tightening behind her eyes. She remembered scrubbing these floors yesterday, kneeling with aching knees, chasing a sense of control she couldn't quite reach. She would have noticed mud then. She was sure of it. At the end of the hall, her bedroom door stood open. It hadn't been when she went to bed. The footprints crossed the threshold and disappeared inside. Her pulse thudded in her ears. She considered calling someone, her sister, a neighbor, anyone. But the idea felt distant, abstract, like something that belonged to a different version of her, one who still believed in explanations that involved other people. She stepped into the bedroom. The curtains stirred slightly, though the window was closed. Pale morning light bled through the fabric, illuminating the bed, the dresser, the chair in the corner where she'd tossed her clothes the night before. The room smelled faintly of damp soil now, stronger here, layered beneath the familiar scent of detergent and old wood. The footprints stopped at the side of the bed. There were no prints leading away. Elena's breath came shallow. She scanned the room, half expecting to see someone standing there, muddy and dripping, waiting for her to notice. But the space was empty. Too empty. Even the shadows seemed thin, stretched. Her gaze dropped to the floor beside the bed. Another set of marks waited there, lighter, less defined. Bare footprints, faintly outlined by moisture, pressed into the wood from the bed outward. Smaller, softer. Hers. The room tilted. She reached out, gripping the bedpost to steady herself. Her fingers brushed against dried mud on the carved wood. She stared at it, uncomprehending. Memory stirred, slow and resistant. Rain. The backyard. Cold soil squishing between her toes. The taste of metal in her mouth from biting her lip too hard. She squeezed her eyes shut, but the images pressed in anyway. Standing at the back door late at night, rain soaking her hair, the yard lit only by the weak porch light, the ground torn up near the old oak tree, her hands shaking, nails rimmed with dirt, telling herself she wouldn't forget this time. When she opened her eyes, the bedroom felt closer, the walls subtly angled inward. The air seemed heavier, humid, like it had been trapped underground. She knelt slowly, following the faint bare prints with her gaze. They led from the bed to the closet. Her closet door was ajar. Elena hadn't opened it in days. She couldn't bring herself to. Inside were boxes she hadn't unpacked, clothes she couldn't wear anymore, and something else she had tried very hard not to think about. The smell was stronger there, wet earth and rot, unmistakable now. Her chest tightened painfully as she pulled the door open the rest of the way. The floor inside the closet was disturbed. Dirt crumbled against the baseboard, dark and fresh, tracked over the old carpet. A small handprint marked the wall at knee height, fingers splayed as if bracing. "No," she whispered. The word sounded thin, unconvincing. Another memory surfaced, clearer this time. Her daughter's boots by the back door, muddy from playing in the yard that afternoon. Elena telling her she'd clean them later, telling her to come inside before it got dark. The search, the shouting, the rain washing everything away. They'd found the boots by the oak tree. They hadn't found anything else. Elena sank to the floor, her knees pressing into the dirt without her noticing. Her breathing came ragged now, each inhale scraping her throat raw. The house seemed to lean in, listening. She understood, finally. The footprints weren't from outside. They were from the yard. From a place she'd sworn she wouldn't return to. A place she'd told herself she'd never touched, never disturbed. But grief had a way of eroding promises, of convincing you that forgetting was kinder than remembering. She had gone out there again last night. In the rain, barefoot, she had followed a path she knew by heart. The muddy prints had led her back. The house hadn't been invaded. It had been witnessed. Elena looked down at her hands. Mud was packed beneath her fingernails, dried and cracked. She didn't remember getting into bed. She didn't remember washing up. The footprints on the floor were already fading, absorbed by the wood, leaving only faint stains behind. Soon there would be no sign of them at all, except in her. Behind her, in the quiet hallway, something shifted soft, familiar footsteps retracing a path that had been walked before. The security camera detected movement in the basement, again. The alert slid across Lena's monitor without sound, a thin gray banner dissolving into the corner of the screen. No chime, no vibration, just the quiet certainty of text appearing where it shouldn't have. The glow from the monitor painted her face in cold blues, turning the kitchen window behind her into a black mirror. She stared at the words longer than necessary, as if waiting for them to correct themselves. Again meant this had become a pattern. Again meant the house had learned a habit. The laptop fan hummed softly, a steady breath that reminded her of the oxygen machine they'd unplugged last winter. The kitchen was otherwise silent. Even the refrigerator had stopped its cycling, leaving a pressure in the air that felt like a held note. Lena rubbed her eyes with the heels of her palms. Sleep came in fragments now, short, jagged pieces that cut more than they rested. She couldn't remember the last time she'd woken without the sense that something had been happening just out of view. The basement camera feed was already open in another tab. She hadn't closed it since the third alert that week. She clicked over. The image refreshed with a faint flicker. The familiar wide-angle distortion bent the concrete floor into a shallow curve, made the far wall lean slightly inward. Cardboard boxes lined the shelves in uneven stacks, their edges softened by dust. The old freezer sat beneath the stairs, its white enamel dulled to the color of bone. A single bulb hung from the ceiling, its light constant but weak, like it was tired of being useful. The timestamp in the corner ticked forward. Nothing moved. The red outline that marked motion pulsed once, then faded. Lena leaned closer to the screen, the chair legs scraping softly against the tile. She searched the shadows for proof of error. A moth, a trick of compression, the furnace exhaling. But the basement remained still, perfectly composed, like a paused memory. She swallowed. Her throat felt dry, tight, as if she'd been holding her breath without noticing. The first alert had come 2 months after the funeral. She remembered that part clearly. Remembered sitting in this same chair, surrounded by condolence cards she hadn't thrown away yet, watching the same feed with mild irritation. Basements shifted. Houses aged. Cameras glitched. She told herself all of that with the confidence of someone who needed it to be true. Now, each alert arrived with the same restraint, the same phrasing, the same calm certainty. Detected movement. Basement. No clips saved. No anomalies logged. As if whatever was happening didn't need to be recorded. Lena glanced toward the hallway. The basement door waited at the end, closed, its shadow pooling beneath the gap. She could picture the stairs behind it without trying. 13 steps, counted during a winter blackout years ago, each one slightly uneven from settling. The smell down there, cool concrete, damp cardboard, something faintly metallic. The basement had always been a place of storage, of postponement. Things went down there to be dealt with later. Later had come and gone. The monitor flickered. Not a cut, not static. Just a single frame that seemed heavier. Lena straightened. The image was the same, but her skin prickled as if she'd missed something. She rewound the feed by a few seconds. The footage rolled back smoothly, silently, and played again. At 2 hours, 47 minutes, and 13 seconds, the motion indicator flared. At 2 hours, 47 minutes, and 14 seconds, a shadow deepened near the freezer. Lena paused the video. She leaned in until she could see the pixels break apart. The shadow wasn't shaped like a person. It wasn't shaped like anything. It was simply more shadow than there should have been, thickening along the floor, pressing up against the freezer's base as if testing its outline. Her chest tightened. She hit play. The shadow receded. The room returned to its baseline emptiness. The motion indicator went dark. Lena exhaled shakily and scrubbed a hand through her hair. "It's nothing," she whispered, the words small in the kitchen. Saying them out loud felt necessary, like anchoring herself to the present. The house answered with a soft creak, wood adjusting to temperature, gravity, time. The next alert came 12 minutes later. Again, she didn't jump this time. She felt it instead. A sinking, familiar sensation, like recognizing the first notes of a song she didn't want to finish. The footage this time showed more. The freezer door trembled. Not enough to rattle. Not enough to open. Just a subtle, inward flex like pressure being applied from the wrong side. Lena's vision tunneled. Her hands had gone cold, fingers numb against the keyboard. "No," she said louder now. The basement had been emptied after the hospital bed was removed. She'd overseen that herself, standing on those stairs with a clipboard, checking boxes off a list. Medical equipment returned. Clothes donated. Old furniture hauled away. The freezer had stayed. It was too heavy, too inconvenient to deal with immediately. She told herself she'd get to it. The footage looped. The same tremor, the same shadow, the same timestamp. Lena's breathing grew shallow. She scrubbed backward through the feed, minutes dissolving into seconds. The same sequence repeated at regular intervals, identical down to the flicker of the bulb. No variation, no degradation. It wasn't live. It was playing something back. Her mind rebelled, offering explanations that frayed as soon as they formed. A software bug, cached data, corrupted memory. But beneath those thoughts, another memory surfaced uninvited. The way the basement had felt that night, too quiet even for grief. The way the air had seemed thick, resistant, as if the house itself was holding something in. She remembered standing at the freezer, her hand on the handle, unable to open it yet. She remembered the weight of the decision, how it had pressed into her chest until breathing hurt. She remembered telling herself that she just needed a moment, just one. The camera feed jumped. The shadow moved differently this time. It elongated, stretching toward the stairs in a way that suggested intent, not motion. Lena's stomach dropped. She realized then what had been wrong all along. Not what the camera was seeing, but when the timestamps were wrong. They matched a date she hadn't let herself think about. The night she'd gone into the basement alone. The night she'd shut the freezer and turned away before the sound inside could change her mind. The alerts weren't detections. They were reminders. The footage looped again, perfectly, faithfully. The house replayed the moment the way memory did. Selectively, relentlessly. Not to accuse, not to threaten, just to ensure it was never forgotten. Lena closed the laptop, plunging the kitchen into darkness. The hum stopped. The silence rushed in. From beneath her feet, deep in the bones of the house, something shifted. Not moving forward, not emerging. Just remembering.